In all the broad empire, there was one place the Christian world could experience the lifestyle Muslims now took for granted: southern Spain. Here, on the European continent itself, Islamic culture would begin to have an effect on the European civilization around it. 1,000 years ago, the Spanish city of Córdoba was a center of learning and culture that rivaled Baghdad. Today, Córdoba's narrow lanes hearken to its medieval past. During the Dark Ages, this was the most prosperous and sophisticated metropolis on the continent. It had streetlights and paved roads, libraries, hospitals and palaces. This was a city of light, a Muslim city.
The city of Córdoba in the 9th and 10th centuries was one of the biggest and most exciting in Europe. We have descriptions of it by people coming and saying, all these flowers everywhere, this open streets, this wonderful light coming down. Northern cities were dark. Córdoba had running water. People lived in big houses. In contrast, in Paris, people lived in shacks by the side of the river.
The glory of medieval Córdoba is here, in what is now the great Roman Catholic cathedral in the middle of town. But the Córdoba Cathedral of today began its life as a mosque, one of the grandest of the Islamic Empire.
The Great Mosque in Córdoba was simply the biggest mosque in the biggest city in southern Europe.
When you climb up into the church tower, which used to be a minaret, you look out over this expanse of roof, it's quite amazing to see this cathedral, complete with flying buttresses, popping up out of the middle of this massive mosque.
Many people came to visit it to view the wonders of the mosque, which had rib vaulting, the kind of vaulting which is like this, and which 100 years later, by a mere coincidence you might think, but not at all a coincidence, appears in the Gothic cathedrals of Northern Europe, in Lincoln Cathedral, in Chartres Cathedral in France. Where does that come from? Obviously influenced by the great Mosque of Córdoba in the south of Spain.
For the occasional European Christian traveler, Córdoba was their one opportunity to glimpse the Islamic world. What they saw was shocking. Most of Europe at that time languished in poverty and squalor. Córdoba was a pageant of prosperity and enlightenment.
In the 10th century, there was a Saxon nun with the unpronounceable name of Hrotswitha, who called medieval Córdoba the ornament of the world. She was very taken with the place, and there you are, she's a Christian nun.
As Europeans made their way from the cold stone of their northern castles into the glorious Muslim cities of southern Spain, they couldn't help but be impressed. In the green hills above Granada was a palace of startling elegance, a shining example of the richness and sophistication Islam brought to medieval Europe. It is called the Alhambra.
The Alhambra is perhaps the most famous example of Islamic architecture to most Westerners. It is the best remaining example of what a medieval Muslim palace would have looked like.
Echoed in the finely carved geometric plasterwork and marble pillars is a vanished lifestyle of extraordinary luxury. the Alhambra reveals the pinnacle of Islamic culture and urbanity.
The beauty of the Alhambra is not so much in the individual details. No, it's more the combination of everything. That is, this wonderful sort of orchestrated interplay of different textures and surfaces, of light and space and water playing inside and outside of buildings. It's almost like a symphony of different elements that are very carefully brought together to provide exquisite enjoyment.
Here, the Muslim elite relished the good life. Reposing on lush carpets, surrounded by perfume and music, the privileged few debated the nature of God, the subtleties of Greek philosophy, or the most recent mathematical revelations from India, while they dined on spiced delicacies served on Chinese porcelains. They strolled the grounds through gardens irrigated by complex gravity-fed water systems. How far Muhammad's followers had come from the life of desert nomads. How distant they felt from the rest of the European continent they now shared. Christian Europe, due north, was struggling on through the Dark Ages. But at the dawn of the 11th century, a tragedy in Jerusalem would put Muslims and European Christians on a collision course.